Hi, everyone. Welcome back to Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast, coming to you from the Long Valley Studio in Washington, Utah. I'm your host, Dave Markel, and this is episode 178. There are certain cases that imprint themselves on the public consciousness, not just because of what happened, but because of what didn't. The silence, the unanswered questions, the way someone can disappear and yet never really be gone. We're seeing that again in the news right now. But it's not new. Back in late October of 2007, 23-year-old Stacy Peterson vanished from her home in Bolingbrook, Illinois. Within days, the story exploded into the national spotlight, not because of evidence, but because of contradictions, media appearances that felt wrong. A husband, Drew Peterson, a former police officer, going on television and claiming she had simply run off with another man. And almost immediately, investigators began looking backward, reopening the 2004 death of his previous wife, Kathleen Savio. Stacy's body has never been found, but her case became one of the biggest stories in the country that year, and for many survivors and advocates, it revealed something far deeper than a single disappearance. It exposed how power and narrative can distort truth, how systems can fail, and how often victims are talked about rather than truly listened to. My guest today has spent years standing in that space. Norma Peterson is the executive director of Document the Abuse, a nonprofit organization dedicated to preserving survivor voices and documenting abuse when systems fall short. Her work isn't about headlines. It's about accountability. It's about making sure stories aren't rewritten, erased, or forgotten once the cameras leave. This conversation is about more than one case. It's about advocacy, it's about memory, and it's about what it means to document abuse in a world that often prefers silence. Here's Norma. Norma, thank you for joining me in the studio today. It's truly an honor and a pleasure to have you.
Thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate being here.
Well, this is going to be an amazing episode. And for my audience, just so you know, we've already been talking before we actually started the episode itself. And we have already determined that Norma's going to be on this show quite a bit. And there is lots to cover, lots to inform my audience about. So thank you for doing this. It's really exciting for me knowing what you do. So Norma is the executive director of an organization, a nonprofit called Document the Abuse. Norma, I'm going to turn this over to you and quit talking. Tell us about yourself, and then tell us about Document the Abuse, and then we'll get into the nitty-gritty of how it all works and why it's even there.
Okay, great. Thank you so much, Dave. I appreciate this. And hello to everyone who's listening. I appreciate your time, your effort, your energy for being here. Like Dave said, my name is Norma Peterson. I am the executive director of what is called Document the Abuse, which houses the Evidentiary Abuse Affidavit, or EAA for short, because that's a mouthful to say, even for me, and very quickly. So we put it down to EAA as a way to make it easy and simple for people to understand. We know that there's another one out there that's an EAA, but I think only if you're of a certain age do you know what that EAA stands for. So we're going to hijack it a little bit. So what the EAA does, the Evidentiary Abuse Affidavit, is it is a free resource for victims of any kind of a situation to which they may feel puts them in danger in some way, makes them feel less than, is a lot of it too. And what it does is it gives them almost what is a digital diary, to be able to write these incidents down in a way that is safe, a way that is secure, simple, and again, always going back to being free. Because we did not want victims to have to worry about whether they were going to buy a gallon of gas, a gallon of milk, or they were going to invest in something that was going to help save their lives at some point. Because we feel that this resource can truly be a game changer for someone. So that's why Document the Abuse exists. The EAA was created to help victims to be able to talk about what's going on with them. And it's safe, it's secure. We can get into the nitty gritty about it, in a little bit, but it's really just, it's so simple. So with a username, a password, and access to the internet, you can get on there. So You could go to your best friend's house. You could go to the library. You could go to church. You can go to, so wherever there's internet, you can go on there. So once you establish a account on there, you can now go pop on there anytime you want and just upload anything that helps to corroborate, substantiate, or validate what it is that you're stating.
And
so again, going back to the concept of being a digital diary.
Right. So they can come on over and over and over again and continue that evidentiary
They
accumulation.
can keep updating it
Right.
and updating it
Good.
because we know on an average it takes 5 to 7 times, and I believe those numbers have even gone up, for a victim to leave. So here's what we're trying to do is, let's say at time 3, something has gone on because we know that things escalate. So you get to time 3 and you're thinking, you know what? There's this thing that happened and I'm not feeling real comfortable about it, so I'm going to write it down. So you go to document the abuse. You start an account with an email. We will never email you unless you specify that you want us to talk to you. Other than that, it is just to tether the account to something. We will never contact you, ever. So you go on there and you start writing down. So we're going to ask you for some information so that we know who you are. We get a snapshot, if you will, of who you are, who is the abusive person in your life that's doing this, asking for that very same information. And then on the third page, it's uploading these incidents. And maybe you have a picture. Maybe you have a screen capture, an email. You can upload all of this to that EAA. Not only that, but in the platform itself, if you are on an iPhone or an iPad, something that gives you the ability to take a picture, if you are within the platform, within your EAA, you have the ability to take that picture. And that iPhone and that iPad are only the vehicle by which that information is passing through. So you don't have to go back and try to remember, did I erase that picture? Did I erase this? It's just using it as a way, as a pass-through. So this is the vehicle by which this information is going to come in. So if I happen to have my iPhone with me and I'm sitting here and I can take a picture of something and I'm in my EAA, I can take that picture or that video and upload it straight there, and it's going to hold it.
Because it is all digital. And that would include, I would imagine, audio recordings.
Anything. So those are usually MP4s that you're getting in audio recordings and things like that. Anything that you feel might be pertinent to what you're stating. And the thing is that sometimes we don't even realize what we're going through because we're so busy surviving our day to day. I just need to get through today. I just need to be safe today. And so each day is its own. But when you start to write down things in your EAA and now all of a sudden you're seeing a pattern or you're noticing that you're writing in here a little bit more often than you used to. And now that you're writing it down and you're looking at it and maybe you're comparing it to information you're being given, which I can give that right now, loveisrespect.org. Loveisrespect.org. Audience, write that one down, because that is a beautiful way to find out whether you're being abused or not. And I will promote them all day long because they give you a great way. They give you green, yellow, and red lights. If those things are popping up and you're seeing this in your EAA, maybe that's what substantiates what you're feeling. Maybe that gut feeling that you're having, but being told that you're not, gaslighting, coercive control. There are so many different ways that someone can make you think that, no, I'm not doing this to you. But when you write it down and look at it, or you write it down and compare it to something that's telling you that, no, it's not, then you know that gut feeling that you're having about it is right. Your decision, there's nothing wrong with your decision-making abilities like you're being told. It is substantiating what you are feeling and what you know. But it sometimes takes us these times before we can figure it out. We need to write it down. We need to look at it, and then we know that it escalates. So if I wrote it down and there was time 3 and there was time 4, now we're on time 5. We know where where that is, where that's escalated to.
And
some of the things I'm sure will be triggers for some of you, so I will apologize ahead of time. I don't want to trigger anybody, but we know that these are the things that are happening. So if you get to time 5, and now something a little bit more substantial has either happened to you or happened in the household, and now you decide, you know what, I just need to do something about this. Now you have all your information all in one place, and now I feel confident. I feel comprehensive, cohesive. I can give you my facts because you know what? I got them all right here. So here's how the EAA works is if you're here to speak on your own behalf, it's holding your information. Now I can go back and I can say, I know this happened to me because I wrote it down. And I put this here and I put this here because sometimes victims have to leave situations quickly. We know that time is of the essence when you're being tracked. So if I have to run out of the house and all my stuff is in the house, all my evidence, then, and I've got to worry about whether it's going to get destroyed or something's going to happen to it. How am I going to scramble, get my kids, get myself out of this situation and grab my stuff? I don't want to have to worry about that. I don't have to if I have an EAA. I don't have to do that. I've already uploaded it from the library, from the my mom's house, from somewhere else, and put it in there. And now they can't destroy it. And these are not erasable.
it seems to me, Norma, that as people do this, say they're a first timer and they're starting to document abusive situations and evidence in the nature that you're talking about, and they don't get much detail in, or they don't really know what to say or how to say it, but that as time goes on and they do it more and more and more, that these reports, these little documents of evidence would get better and better and better over time.
You would feel more confident speaking your words, telling your story because you've been subjugated to think, or suppressed to think your voice isn't worthy, or no one's going to believe you, or I'm not abusing you, or this isn't happening to you. So when you write things down, and, so many of us when we were young journaled, or we
Right.
wrote things down and stuff like that. So we're just going back to the basics in terms of what we're asking people to do, but we're doing it in a way that helps them. Here's another aspect to this is the EAA is a web-based app. And what I mean by that is that it used to be on the App Store. And so it was something that you downloaded that you had to pay for. In its first iteration, that's what it was. That very first part of it. And this was at the very beginning when they were starting to make apps. So she had, I am not the creator. I am the executive director and the forefront of the EA. It was created by another woman named Susan Murphy Milano. There's a whole story that goes behind that as to why I now have to be that person to take this forward. So that's what that goes back to. Her mindset was that if victims didn't see a value in it, they wouldn't do it. So if I charge them for it, they're more than likely going to do it because they paid for it. So that was kind of her mindset. And it was something that got downloaded to the App Store. Now you got to worry about what you're downloading from the App Store because who's going to see that?
Mm-hmm.
And what happens if I can't pay for it month to month? What's going to happen to my information? Here's some other person that I've got to worry about now, some random person. I got to worry about holding my information because I can't pay for it in a month. And where am I going to come up with that money? Where's it going to come from? Is it going to come from the App Store and somebody's going to see it? Is it going to come from an account I don't have? I can't do that. And there's a whole reason behind that we are going to get into next in terms of our story as to why Document the Abuse exists is because we did not want that to happen. We vetted all kinds of platforms to make sure for safety, security. This is used by Fortune 100 companies. They deal with very high profile information, and that's if they feel confident, so do we. So they're the holder of this, and it's a web-based app so that you didn't have to worry about finding it on the phone, so that you could access it from anywhere. So that's just one of the many cool things about this is not only the ability to to upload information in the ways that you can, but also that you don't have to worry about, is someone going to find it? And if you go on our website, we have information as to how to keep yourself safe there, how to go incognito, how to do this, how to do that. So we're trying to walk victims through knowing that not all of us grew up on the internet. Not all of us grew up knowing all this information. How am I going to know what to do to make myself safe if I'm going to go fill this thing out? Because I already don't feel safe to begin with. So if we're going to ask victims to do these kinds of things, victims know that we have done our homework. We are keeping you safe. We are keeping you secure. And that is always at the forefront of everything we do. And we want you to have that ability, because when you know what you know and you're being told differently, and this tells you that you're right, now maybe you can change that situation. You can look for the resources that are out in your communities that are going to help you change this, because I can guarantee you they are out there. Because I am a resource provider, I get to work with the service providers. I get to work within the government systems that are out there. I get to work within the law enforcement systems that are out there, because I am not a service provider. I don't have to work in any particular area. I am here to serve, and we are here to serve any and everyone. It does not matter where you are, because you have that access through the internet. We are even internationally known. We get website visits from various countries, and we're watching it go up all the time. When I get into my story, you will know why we are known internationally at this point.
Another thing I want to point out is that even if the abuse has been going on for years and nothing's been documented, and now you find out about document the abuse, you can start in wherever you want to, in terms of, I'm going to pick up from what's going on today and yesterday, but I'm going to also go back, 15 years and start documenting that too, to the best of my memory. So it's somewhere where I can use it if I ever need to, that it can be pulled up for court, that it can be pulled up for this situation, this civil thing, this whatever. It's there.
There you got it now, Dave. You've got it. You've got the understanding, and that's what we want victims to understand. It doesn't matter if it happened 5 minutes ago, 5 months ago, 5 years ago, 50 years ago. We don't care when it happened.
Document it.
Document it. Get it out of your head and out of your heart, please, because that's when you can do something with it. We not only want to empower victims, we want to embolden them to take their stand. We all have power. We can empower people all day long. You have power. We want to embolden you to use your stories. We want to embolden you to live your best life, because everyone deserves a life without violence. And it doesn't matter if that violence is physical, because here's the biggest, this is my biggest pet peeve. If you can't tell, my biggest pet peeve is that when we use the term violence, it implies physicality immediately. And that's the realm that we deal with. And it's the realm that a lot of, and I don't want to call people out, but it's a lot of what our law enforcement and our judicial system have used as their benchmarks for abuse for a very, very long time.
You're absolutely right.
We want to change those trajectories. We want to change those thought processes, because truly it's not. It shouldn't have to be that I have to, because if it's gotten to that physical violence, know that there was 5 other events that went on before it got to that.
Absolutely.
That I could not show you in a physical sense. I can't show you that bruise, but I can, if I could show you what my heart looks like, if I could show you what my mind looks like, because what I've been told and what I've been threatened with and been implied, and all under the guises of coercive control and gaslighting and the various other mental and emotional and digital, and I could go on and on and on in terms of the ways that people can get abused that don't carry any physical marks. So if you've ever thought, well, I haven't been abused because they didn't do this, let me tell you, my friends, if you have ever been made to feel less than, you have been abused. If someone has told you that you don't deserve to be here, or that you are not worthy of the love that other people give you, or things of that nature, that is abuse. And we need to do a better job letting people know what it is and teaching our children, because that leads into a whole nother pet peeve, that we don't teach our kids enough about relationships in schools, because that goes back to that loveisrespect.org. When I do classes, I go to high schools, and I do it for this one high school here in Illinois in particular, and done it for years, and it's because she has an AP forensics class. So this falls under forensic evidence. So but what I do is I tell them, because literally in my story, I am singing to the choir, and I let them know that. But by the same token, I'm getting them right before they leave for college into an environment they've never engaged in, and may not know, if they haven't grown up in an environment that gave them good examples, what abuse might look like. I can tell them, you are like a car. You guys should all have this in driver's ed. Just, you guys are that car in driver's ed. You're 5,000 pounds of can hurt somebody else, or I can get hurt if I don't follow the rules of the road. And we tell kids about the rules of the road so that they can stay safe, and that they know how to take care of that vehicle and how to do it safely. We invest in that. Why aren't we doing that with them? Why aren't we telling them about the green lights? These are healthy behaviors. Why aren't we giving them those yellow lights that tell them, hey, if somebody's doing this to you, or these types of behaviors are being perpetrated, you need to take a little caution here. Maybe we take a second step. If it's this red light behavior right here, just stop, please. Because just like if you were to run a red light, what are the consequences that are going to happen to you or someone you know or someone you love? Because I've watched it happen. So I want to let them know, because really that's where the work starts, is that if we can tell kids before they even get out into these situations what is safe, what your gut instinct is telling you, because not enough people listen to their gut. It is there. It's your second brain. It's there to keep you safe. If it is telling you something, please listen, because that's its job. Literally, you can read research that tells you it is just like your brain's job, it is your gut's job to keep you safe. If there is a little thing that's going on in there, please listen to it. It knows. It's trying. It's trying to tell you. And the more you stuff it down, the worse those consequences can be. So please,
And
yes.
not only recognize that and take action, but document it.
Bingo, because it can help you in so many ways. So let's take a dive in, shall
Okay.
we?
Yeah, let's do.
All right.
Let's go back to the history of where this all came from, what its
Let's go back
origins
to
were.
October 28th, 2007, because that's really where it all started, is on that date, at least for us and for so many others.
Take it away.
And so, as I said, well, I'm the executive director, but what I also am is I am the sister-in-law to missing Bolingbrook, Illinois mother Stacy Peterson, who went missing on October 28th, 2007 from her home in Bolingbrook, Illinois. Her husband, Drew, is my brother-in-law. I am married to his brother, which puts us in a very unusual position as people who talk about domestic violence. So I laugh a little bit, because it's like, I would have never imagined that this is what I'd be doing. And I'm grateful to be doing this, but when I think about this, it will be 19 years this year. Let me give you the background, because I'm sure a lot of you were pretty young when all of that happened, because it has been almost 20 years. So my 23-year-old sister-in-law, Stacy Peterson, who was the fourth wife of my brother-in-law, Drew, who is a Bolingbrook police sergeant. So it's a small bedroom community. He's gone up the ladder. This is his fourth wife. She goes missing. It is her sister who has to struggle through the process of getting her listed as missing. And so that next morning, she goes to Illinois State Police because he works for Bolingbrook. And she knows she's missing. She's been looking for her all day long and all evening long and trying to find out from Drew, my brother-in-law, where she's at, who is not being in any way helpful, and now stating that Stacy left him, took $25,000, a red bikini, and ran off with some random man and left him with 4 children and a home, which was absolutely ludicrous to listen to. Cassandra Kales is her name, and that's Stacy's sister, and she was the one that went to ISP and got her listed as missing. We, as a family, do not find out that Stacy is missing until that next morning, because, okay, to share the story of how we found out is Paul, my husband, we had a business together, and he used to work from home. So he would get up at 6 o'clock in the morning and he would come downstairs. He would fix his coffee, get ready to go into his office and go work on the computer. Now, we had, from this job that we had done, he had gotten this beautiful big screen TV that took up like our whole wall because we lived in a small home. But it was like, if that's what makes you happy, fine. So that's what he had. So he would come downstairs, grab his coffee, sit in front of the TV, watch the morning news about 6 o'clock in the morning, and then start to work. Monday morning, turns on the TV, and there is a picture of Stacy, and she is missing. And this is how he finds out. Now, he comes upstairs. We live in a small home, split level. He comes upstairs and he comes to wake me up. Now, I am not an early morning riser by any stretch of the imagination. And so when you're coming to wake me up at that hour, my thought process is this better be good. I don't wake up easily and I don't wake up well. So he comes upstairs at 6 o'clock in the morning. Norma. What? God, what are you waking me up for? You need to hear this. I'm like, what is going on? I'm thinking to myself, so I'm kind of waking up. He's shaking me. I can hear it in his voice. Norma. I'm like, what? Stacy's missing. Wait a second. What? Stacy's missing. She's on the TV. Now, Dave, without thinking, without having any time to think, the first thing I tell him is he killed her. I know my brother-in-law, and I know him well. I have been in this family now 35 years almost. So I've seen Drew through 3 wives. Was there anything that we could have done? Probably not. Is there guilt involved in thinking that we might have? Hell yeah.
Absolutely.
Every day. Woulda, shoulda, coulda. And so this is how we find out that my beloved little, she's the same age as my girls, my nieces. I felt very protective of her. I knew she didn't run off with anybody. Why in the hell would you not have called me if you knew I was close to her? If you thought she ran off with somebody, why would you not have called the people that were close to her to ask her, who did she run off with? Because you knew. You didn't need any of us. You knew. And that's so. This is how we find out Stacy is missing. And such. And so the madness begins. Now, Drew, who is literally 30 years older than Stacy, she was 17 years old when he met her. And he's a police officer. So we won't even get into all the questions that should have been asked at that period of time. That's a whole nother episode right there.
Yeah, there you go.
As we delve into that whole situation. But the thing is that it was allowed to happen. Stacy was Drew's 4th wife. He was in a very acrimonious divorce with his 3rd wife when he got with his 4th wife because of her age and because of how he did it. He was having an affair with a 17-year-old girl while he was married to his third wife, Kathleen Savio. So when Stacy went missing, there was a gentleman by the name of Mark Furman who came out. And if you're in law enforcement, you know who Mark Furman is. He was involved in the OJ case. So he hears there's 30 years difference. There's a young girl. There's law enforcement. True crime is really starting to take off. This is when they build a whole network around it. So now you've got Nancy Grace and Dan Abrams, and everybody's got a show. And oh my God, there's all kinds of nonsense. So Mark Furman comes out and he starts poking around. There's a cop, huh? There's third wife, fourth wife. Oh, hey, he's got a third wife that died under strange circumstances 2 weeks before the end of their divorce. Their very acrimonious divorce. Now he starts doing some digging. Steph Watts, who works with a lot of different places that do documentaries, well known, he comes out and he brings Dr. Michael Baden with him, who again, back to the OJ and a few other cases, famous cases. So he comes out and they start digging around into Drew's background. And now they start digging into Kathleen Savio's case, who was Drew's third wife, who was younger than the second wife by 10 years. So each time that this man got remarried, he went 10 years younger and 10 years younger and 10 years younger. Now, the first wife, they never had any issues with. So like I said, going back to the story. So now everybody's out here. We got Mark Furman out here. We've got Michael Baden out here, and they get an autopsy. Now, Drew is thinking to himself, and he even said as much to her that it was stated, nobody's going to care about you because you're just a street rat. If anything happened, if I did anything to you, nobody's going to care. Nobody knows you. You're 23 years old. Who cares? Her mother had gone missing when she was 15. Stacy's mom went missing when she was 15. He even so much as said, nobody's going to believe you because your mom went missing. That dude was just planning stuff and just thinking things because this is the way that Truth thought. Everything was about control, power and control. And those are the elements that are with every person who does abuse or perpetrates abuse. Or
it's an offender mentality, and they practice in their heads all the time. What
I know. He was already...
Yeah.
Dave, who the hell says that?
Yeah.
Who says that shit to their other half?
Mm-hmm.
You know, and if you're law enforcement and you're doing that, knock it off. Just gonna say it right there. Really? This is what you're acting like? Stop it. Know that you're part of the problem. That's how that goes. So here, now we get an autopsy. They now list it as a homicide, and now Drew's in going into jail. So before this happens, in the first week after Stacy went missing, Drew now has 4 kids that he's got to take care of. 2 very young children, not even a year and a half and 3 years old, and then 10 and 12. He has some guy that we had never heard of before come in and help him take care of the kids for the first week that this happens, because he's not expecting all this media that's coming and all these people that are coming and all this stuff that is happening. And he's got the next door neighbors starting stuff with him and making huge noise right next door to him. He was not expecting any of it because he truly believed that nobody would care about her and that nobody would do anything because the family was not your stellar, high profile family. So nobody's going to care about them either. Nobody's going to believe them. So he counted on all of that. And when it didn't happen that way, now all of a sudden there's all these people and he's having to wear masks so nobody sees him. And he looks like an idiot out there and talks about bringing back your library cards. I mean, if anybody wants to take a look at the nonsense that went out there, it's everywhere. You can find it everywhere. Google Drew Peterson and you'll find all kinds of crazy things out there. So now the gentleman that is living with him during this period of time is observing his behaviors and going, this is not the behaviors of an innocent man. This is not the even I, who don't have any experience, know that this is not the behaviors of an innocent man. And he starts questioning Drew. So now Drew figures out, I got to get this guy out of the house, because if I'm going to keep doing these behaviors, I need somebody that I isn't going to question me. He calls Paul and I, can you come and help me? Paul and I had a business together. We lost the business because of all the things that went on, which, again, whole nother story right there. So we drop everything, we grab our kid, and we move over there. So we literally live there at his house, looking from the outside, from the inside out.
Right.
In the most surreal situation that I have. It's nuts. It's nuts because, like I said, this is the beginning of true crime TV. So here's what they did. The apron at the end of your driveway that goes from the sidewalk to the street, that's city property. Okay? It's the same for your driveway. They knew, that the media knew, so they would come, because keep in mind, this is 2007. So media isn't what it is now. So they're coming in at 4:00 in the morning with these vans with the big antennas on the top, and it was a cul-de-sac. So you'd see ABC, NBC, CBS, Telemundo, VTN, them all. And they'd line up around the cul-de-sac. So you'd hear this at friggin' 4:00 in the morning. They're there, coming in. They'd all have their coffee, setting up all their things. They were setting up at the end of the apron because it was city property, and they could. So that's what they would do every day.
Right.
So there they all are at the end of the driveway doing their 6 a.m. news, their 7 a.m. news, their 9 a.m. news, their noon news. Then they would all leave, go get lunch. And then maybe we could come and go. And then it would start back up 4:00, 5:00, 6:00. And then they would end with the 9 and the 10 o'clock news. And this is how we lived our life. We could not open the front blinds because anytime we did, it was insane and surreal. What we felt like we were in a fishbowl, and it was feeding that media frenzy. And he was not doing anything not to feed that frenzy. He was parading around. He was being his obnoxious self. But you know what he did? He let the rest of the world see what we all dealt with. You could tell that there was nothing you could do about the behaviors he was having, because even he knew that his behaviors were somewhat abnormal, because he would tell you, that's just how I am because of law enforcement, or that I just have a sick sense of humor. He had an excuse for it. But he made everybody crazy with his behaviors. How obnoxious and arrogant and things he was. So this is what we dealt with.
Let me ask you this, Norma. When you and your husband first heard about this and he woke you up and you said to yourself, he killed her, did you say it out loud to your husband?
Yes, I did. He can verify that that's exactly what I said.
Yeah.
Yeah,
I would imagine. When that thought comes to you,
it just,
you're
I
waking
didn't
up,
even think about it, Dave. It
right?
just came out. It was just, that's what I mean. It
got
just,
blurted
so
out.
inherent, going back to that gut feeling, when I tell you, listen to your gut is telling you the truth, whether you want to hear it or you don't.
So let me ask you this, and I don't want to interrupt your story. It's intriguing and so fascinating in the sense that I think it's critically important for other victims and survivors to hear the intricate processes that went on and that you made mental notes of. But he then later asks you and your husband to come help him take care of those kids. And you thinking he's a murderer and you're moving into his house. Talk to me about those thoughts, if you would.
Okay, so my brother-in-law and I had always had a somewhat, I don't even want to say adversarial, but we would go back and forth because I could hold my own with him. We could go back and forth. So we had a certain amount of respect for the fact that I could play like that verbally. We could spar and things like that. And it wasn't in any way ever taken in a bad form between us, but he couldn't get away with the types of behaviors that he could with everybody else, that he could with me. There was one instance in particular that speaks exactly to that point, that yes, I did know exactly who I was living with, and I knew exactly the types of dangers that I was putting myself and my family in. We were in the front room of his home, and this was during the time period that we were living there, and we couldn't open the blinds, but when you first walked into the home, he had an office that went off to the right, and I was standing there looking out the window as if I could see out the window. And he walked in from the kitchen because there was a walkway that went right into the office, and I'm standing there and I'm kind of just staring out into space, if you will, looking out the front as though I could see. And he walked in and he said, "What are you thinking about?" And I just remember looking at him and telling him, "I don't think you want to know what I'm thinking about." And he turned around and he walked away. That's probably the closest that we ever came to acknowledging each other, because you can't tell me that that man didn't know how I felt. But he also knew I was going to do anything I could to protect those children. It was not my job to bring him down. It was not my job to do anything about him. My job was to take care of those children, because that's what Stacy would have done for me and my child. So I was there to take care of them at whatever the cost might have been for my own self, because I had a more important thing to do. I had to protect them in just what was the most surreal situation anybody could come across. And these were young kids, and I had to protect them. So that's why you never saw me out there, is we had an agreement. So the first time that I went to go take the kids out and take them to school, all the media came running up and Paul came running out and he's like, "No, we are not doing this." And I told them the same thing. I do not want to be seen on TV. The only reason I am here is to take care of the children. So we are not doing this. We are not. You are not taking pictures of these kids. And Paul did the same thing. And they were like, "Okay, we get it." And they offered us the courtesy and the space to do that. That's why you never saw me out there and you never saw us on TV, is because that wasn't my thing. He had the neighbors saying things. He had Stacy's sister doing stuff. And people didn't understand why we didn't go out there and say anything and why we were living there. And because we were doing this, law enforcement assumed that we were on his side or in his corner.
That makes
And they
sense.
never
Yeah.
came to talk to us.
That perception on law enforcement's end that you were complicit in some way.
Bingo. Because we chose not to say anything, because everybody was out there screaming what an arrogant ass he was and da da da. You know, why aren't you going out? Bigger picture, people. I have children, and they have everyone telling them who their father and their mother are, and having to listen to this horrifying information about these people that they love. I am not going to be another one of those voices that goes out there and does that. It is not my job, and I don't owe anybody an explanation. But apparently the media feels the need, and people, because they feed into the media, feel that entitlement to that information. You owe me that explanation to tell me why you aren't screaming or why you aren't doing this. So that's one thing that I would, ask people who take in true crime. Nothing wrong with it. I get it. There's a fascination with it, and I don't blame you, because even after all these years, obviously I'm still fascinated with it because I'm doing what I'm doing. But by the same token, take it in and understand or give empathy to the people who might not always express everything.
Absolutely.
And why they didn't, because I wind up giving that explanation now and people get it. You were protecting the kids. And even to this day, I really don't say a whole lot about him. And I prefer not to even talk about him at all. But he's the whole reason that all of us are doing what we're doing while we're here. So, in its essence, but this is where I want to change the conversation. I don't want to make it about him anymore. I want to make it about the women that this goes to, because, in going through all of this, this is how all this happened. Okay, so now let's take a step back to the story that we had going about Kathleen and what happened with her. Because in that time period that all this is happening, they're finding all this information out that Kathleen had told people, given people, said to people, had pictures of, had police reports, hospital reports, had letters written to her about the affair. I mean, he had all this stuff, and it all had to come in under hearsay. And they had to pass a hearsay law. So this is where the work of document the abuse comes in, because now, just like everybody else, we are finding out all this stuff during trial, like everybody else is. I mean, did we know some stuff? Yeah, but not to the extent that it was out there. So again, going back to, this is why we didn't even know everything. So how could we say anything? Like I said, there's so much to this story. We lived there. He winds up kicking us out later, 2 days before Christmas, because now he figures out he doesn't need us anymore. The only reason that he had us at the house, I'm bouncing back and forth, and I realize that. The only reason that he had us at the house was because they can pick him up for 72-hour questioning. You know this, right?
Mm-hmm.
You know how all that rolls. I can come and pick you up. I can take you in for questioning. I can hold you for up to 72 hours without having to charge you. He kept waiting for them to do that, and they never did. That is why we were there. He didn't want the kids to be without someone to take care of him in case they came and picked him up for questioning. So if Paul and I were there, which I was staying there all the time, I was doing the laundry, doing the cooking, trying to give some semblance of normalcy in a surreal situation. So that's what we were there to provide. A mom, a dad, a sibling, with my son, their cousin, same age, so we were trying to give them some kind of sense of stability. So all of this is going on. And now we're all finding out later on as Drew gets arrested, because now they're finding all this information out about Kathy. And now it's all coming out in trial, and it's all coming in as hearsay. This is where document the abuse and the evidentiary abuse affidavit come from, is what we found out during that trial and what Kathleen had gone through, and what we as a family, that while we couldn't do anything then, can do something with that information now. So all of this stuff comes out about what happened to Kathleen, and all this hearsay, and they have this law and everything like that. So there is a woman by the name of Susan Murphy Milano, and she is a domestic violence awareness advocate that works in the Chicagoland area, all while this is going on. She had written a book called Moving Out, Moving On, and in it was the beginning of the evidentiary abuse affidavit in a written format. She sees Drew running around out there during this trial and during this whole period of time, and she's thinking, this is ridiculous that this guy's getting to do this. I have a resource here that is perfect for what she would have went through. And if she would have had it, might Stacy still be here? If she would have had it, would we be going through what we're going through? I don't know. No, I do know. Yes, no, we wouldn't.
Yeah.
So Susan reaches out to me during this period of time, and we meet. So now the trial's going on. Her and I, under the surface, we've met. We're starting to work together. She writes another book called Time's Up. How appropriate. Time's Up. I believe they had a movement like that. Time's Up.
Yeah.
In it now is the CD and the full iteration of her EAA that she has created. Drew goes to trial and everything.
Now,
He's
we're talking
convicted.
about the Kathleen trial.
Right, the Kathleen trial. So he's got a fourth wife missing.
And
He's going to trial for the murder of his third wife that they now figured out because the fourth wife's missing. The circumstances. So now her family's finally getting justice, because they were screaming from the rooftops, because they could, again, if I know you have an EAA, I can go tell somebody. You can make me a copy. You can tell me if I go missing or something happens to me, go to the police and tell them I got an EAA, and they can contact us. We can get into all that later. But the thing is that this is where all of this comes from, is all this information that we got from Kathleen's case. Now Susan Murphy Milano has a resource that she sees this information. She's like, I got this. I got this. I got to wait for you to do this. And nobody wouldn't have this happening. So she gets a hold of me. We start working together.
These concepts are born out of what's going on and what she sees.
And she's already been working on it. The reason there's so many stories. The reason that Drew just really drew her ire was because Susan's father was a Chicago police detective who wound up killing her mother and then himself and set the house on fire under a DV case. She saw Drew and it triggered her because she saw her. And that's what led her to reach out to me, because she was seeing the same thing happen there all over again. And she now had a resource built from her experience that was pertinent and just right into ours. And so we start working together. Susan passes from cancer 5 years to the day that my sister-in-law went missing. Susan passed from cancer on October 28th, 2012. These women are forever tied together. Susan, Stacy, and Kathleen. It is their voices that we bring forward. It is their stories and their experiences that are going to be remembered as why victims now have a different way to do this. It's not going to be in his name we remember. It's going to be their legacy. This is what their children are going to know about their moms and their experiences. They just, that A, they didn't leave them willingly, and B, that they will be the reason that others won't have to go through this. That's their legacy, and that's what I get to carry forward. This is what I get to do with the pain and the tragedy of these women, and I have the privilege of making that different for someone. I get to take shoulda, woulda, coulda, should have done something, and I would have, if I would have had the chance, I could have made a difference, shoulda, woulda, coulda. I can, I will, I am. I can change those 3 negatives.
What an honor, right?
Bingo. I get to represent these people, have the privilege of doing that.
It's a painful remembrance every day of why you're doing this, but it's also a privilege and a motivator to keep doing what you're doing, right?
To keep their voices out there, because, we read these statistics, and they're statistics, 6%, it's this percent, it's that percent. What we're not thinking of is, who are those names that make up those statistics? This is Stacy. There's 76% of Stacy's. There's 76% of Kathleen's. We need to give these percentages voices and faces so that people understand a little bit better what we're talking about when we're saying this. And now we have a chance to change that. Are you kidding me? All day long I'm doing this because now I have a way to change it. And so do you. Whether you're in the judicial system, whether you're in law enforcement, whether you're a victim advocate, whether you are a victim survivor, whether you're the best friend, the mom, the cousin, the co-worker, because this works in any place that you have the potential for pain, for harm, for violence, for abuse, anywhere that you feel like these women must have at some period of time. And they had nowhere to go. You have somewhere to go because of them. And it's called the EA. If you do nothing out of this episode today, go look at Document the Abuse, because I can guarantee you we all either know someone, we are someone, or we can help someone who's dealing with domestic violence. That's what our statistics are telling us. Plain and simple. So let's honor these women and what they went through and how their lives were put out into the public and the media, and make their lives, make it what changes someone else's. This is how we do it. And this is what I get to do. And so we do trainings. We train people on how to use, because you can go on there and use it. It doesn't matter. It's free. There's a instruction page and everything like that. I'm on Family Violence Coordinating Councils. So I train a lot of different shelters. I've trained the Illinois Coalition Against Against Sexual Assault. I've trained the Illinois Department of Veteran Affairs. I've trained in medical facilities. So it doesn't matter what the environment is. I've trained state's attorneys' offices. I've spoken with judges. I was on a panel for the Chicago Bar Association. People are starting to open their doors. And if I could give reassurance to victims as a person who gets to represent you, if I can tell you that there are so many people who are really trying hard to work on your behalf, to make the environments that you engage in work better for you. I have met so many wonderful people doing work that in these 18 years, it has changed the environment. Does it have a long way to go? Yes, we have so much work to do. Family courts need our help in understanding how abusers manipulate the system. We need better training for our judges, and they don't want to get trained. Now, there's a whole other subject there. But I mean, it just goes to the better that we all know about this resource, or the better that we all know about abuse, better we can do for victims. And these women were all victims. It always goes back to, we can do better. We can make it better. We can make that difference for them. And it's here for you. And this is why we do what we do, because we want to make sure that you feel like you have a place to go. And it doesn't matter, like I said, whether it happened 18 years ago, there's still things I can put about how the system itself abused me. And it doesn't matter whether you think it is. It's a digital diary. I don't, use it, talk about it. Doesn't matter whether you have to believe that it is or it isn't. If it makes you feel less than, or it makes you feel in danger, write it down. Go back to it time and time again.
We've barely scratched the surface of all the things that we need to talk about, right? We said that even before I pushed the record button. And because of what you just said, it begs the question, what happens to that stuff once it's documented, once it's there in digital format, and it is in the form of a affidavit and therefore usable as evidence, right? How does that work?
Okay, so here's what you can do. So what we're working with is, in the event that you're not here to speak on your behalf, it's a way to convey a picture to somebody. So let's say you're missing. And because of all the information that you've written in there, we now have a place to go look for you, or we know what the information was. To just give you, so I'm talking about an extreme at first, but it will eventually go there. So then we'll back up and be able to talk about the prevention measures. This is a national resource. It's an international resource. Anywhere that an affidavit is recognized, you can use it. So it doesn't matter what the environment is or where it is. If it's an affidavit, it's usable. We have information for an online notary on there, because we know that an affidavit is at its most effective when it's notarized. Makes it that much easier to bring into court, correct?
Absolutely.
So it's representing that person's voice. I had a officer in Georgia get a hold of me because he had a homicide victim, unfortunately. And he had been told that she had filled out an EIA. And so that's why he was contacting me. So somebody knew that she might have filled one out, so they were able to contact me. So now, with the appropriate credentials of the inquiring party, that we can now go forward in that information. I was able to answer that officer with a yes or a no. He had given me the credentials, so I was able then to answer yes or no. And that's pretty much how that works, is if someone isn't here to speak on their own behalf, we need that kind of information before we even say one way or the other, because we're keeping someone's information safe. So we want to make sure that we're taking all the protocols and all the procedures to the utmost that we can. So that's what he did. So then I unfortunately did not have that information, or she had not filled out an EIA, because she had worked with Susan years ago. And Susan had kept telling her, you need to fill this out. You need to fill this out. And she never did. I had the opportunity to ask the police officer that I was dealing with, the detective, if she would have had one what would this have done for you? Would it save me time, energy, effort, money? Because I wound up having to file for 10 different subpoenas because the information was in 10 different places. With an EAA, the information is all in one place, and I can hand that over to you. Now, that isn't an extreme case. We are trying to prevent those extreme cases. So this is what we want you to do with the EAA. So you go in there and you fill it out. You start filling it out. You don't have to notarize it. You can keep updating it. There may be a time where you feel like it's quote unquote complete, and then that might be a way to add it. So let's say I'm filling out page 1. I'm just getting started. You don't need to take it to affidavit on that first page. You need to do it when you've got that information written in there. And then there is a way to state on there, this is who I am. This is what I'm stating. Now, when you are here to speak on your own behalf, it's like a reference sheet. So a lot of times when we are getting ready to maybe take an action that goes to an event that happened, and it is now, like I said, incident 4 or incident 5, and I can't remember what happened in incident 3. How am I going to remember this? This is where the EAA comes in, is now I have a way that all in one place I can tell you on October 10th of 2010, this happened. I can tell you that on, maybe January 2011, this happened, and here's my evidence for it. So now I can substantiate what it is that I am telling whoever it is that is either advocating on my behalf, whether it be a state's attorney, whether it be a counselor, because it's not normally law enforcement. Where law enforcement comes in is they're the one that's going to be giving out this resource.
Right.
So really, that's where they get involved. But with the judicial system, with the victim advocates, with counselors, I get to give them this information in a way that helps them to understand what I've been through. And maybe I don't have to repeat it 5 times either, which is traumatizing, or maybe then it goes to, it puts me back in that mindset, that PTSD mindset, because now I've got to tell somebody over and over and over again, maybe what in printing this out, or because you can print these out. Or maybe, in telling someone I filled out an EAA, I've got all my information right here. Now, what I do want to clarify, this is not a silver bullet. It is not a panacea, as much as I would like to say. When you are using it and you are in a criminal court situation or a situation to which there is discovery, this can lead to discovery because it's holding your facts. That has to be said. On the flip side of that, what it's also doing, that it's showing a pattern of behavior to which someone is going to have to answer for also, because it is in there. So now it becomes inherent on them to have to justify that either that action, that behavior, that whatever it is that I am stating, and now I have the evidence for, is something that they are going to have to counter. So depending on, if I have 5, 10 solid pieces of evidence, now you're going to have to answer for that evidence. So it works more in their favor than it works against them. So we want them to understand that. Here's the other thing. Yes, it's discoverable. We know that so many times victims are going to wind up either getting back together with that perpetrator. It happens. Nobody's judging anyone. You've got to go back, whatever the reasons are, it happens. No judgments. We don't care. You've got to do you. We would prefer that you were in a safer situation, but you've got to do what you got to do. Now that person knows that you did this in discovery. Well, shit, what happens now? Hey, it's not deletable. They can never go in there and delete anything. Even if they had access to it, they cannot go in and delete it. Start another one. It is that simple.
Right.
Start another one. And yes, they may know, but they still can't access it unless they have your username and your password. So as long as you can keep those 2 things safe, you are good.
Yeah.
So just start another one and start your evidence all over again.
Mm-hmm.
If you've got it, if you've still got access to it. The thing is that you don't ever lose access to it because it's not deletable. It's such a great tool for victims to be able to navigate, We try to make it simple. Now, here's another cool thing about this. Inside of that platform, so you go in there and you're starting to fill out an EAA. What you'll see in there is the ability to upload all this information. You can also take photos and videos if you have the ability to do so. So now within that platform, you're using that vehicle of the phone or the iPad to take pictures that upload straight to it. So there's some more evidence that you're putting into there. So now you can keep doing that in the new one. So just start adding some more stuff. Say, I filled out an EAA on this date. It's now not usable for me, so I'm starting over again. Here it is. So maybe that's how we tie the two together. So we can always figure out ways to contain that information and to have someone use that.
There's a couple of things that I want to address for those who are listening to this and trying to understand the importance of an evidentiary abuse affidavit and how that would be used. One of the things I want to mention is something you touched on, and that is the safety of that document being preserved. And not only is it being preserved for however long it needs to be preserved, but it's also being kept safe from, as you just mentioned, people who don't have that password and username. And so that evidence is therefore obtainable by those with the credentials, for instance, a prosecutor who knows that maybe it exists. They don't even have to know for sure. They can inquire.
Okay, so here's what it is. There is a neat little thing we have that goes to that. So the EAA itself is discoverable. We have a caveat to that. So let's just say that there is incident 3 and someone's filling this out. In the outside of the EAA, because it's held in a separate platform, so then there's the website and then there's the EAA platform. So the website helps you get to that other platform, but it's a separate platform because of the safety issues that we everything's safe, secure. 2 separate things. This way, nothing's ever compromised.
Like put in a locker.
Right. Bingo. There you go. It's like a digital library. We're librarians and we're holding everybody's information. So not everybody can get in. So this is the way that works. But on the website, if you go to fill it out, there is a permissions for sharing checkbox. So let's say I checkbox that because I'm thinking, okay, at some period of time, I may want to share this with the state's attorney's office. So maybe I'm not doing anything about it now while I'm filling out incident 3 here. But maybe by incident 5, it's something that I may think about sharing with the state's attorney's office because now it's escalated. I'm getting things done. So now here's the cool part about this. If I've checked permissions for sharing, what that does is it does allow for the state's attorney then to call me or call document the abuse and find out. We now then can hand that information over and it doesn't show up in the EAA that they've given that permission. So it keeps the victims from in front of the abusers having to say, I gave them permission to get my EAA. It gives them that out. It doesn't show up in the EAA itself that they gave permissions for sharing. But here's what would happen is we would be getting calls from all over the place if anybody could call and say, does someone have an EAA? With that check mark, we want victims to tell someone, I've checkboxed this or I'm doing this, or tell the state's attorney, hey, I've got an EAA that you can go grab at some period of time. So we haven't had to explore anybody just randomly calling us saying, do you have an EAA for this case? It's been kind of specific to if someone has checked that permissions for sharing box, that we get those kinds of calls.
I guess then my confusion came from the idea that when that police officer contacted you and said, such and such has happened, I'm trying to find out if there's an EAA because I was told there was.
Right. So when they're not here to speak for themselves.
Right. That's what I'm asking.
Yes, there is a difference.
Situations?
Right. Different situation. Someone's not here to speak for themselves. Now get me your credentials, get me the report that states that they are not here to speak for themselves.
That's what I was referring to.
Right, because autonomy is what we want to give that victim back. It is their story. They have to decide how they want to use it and
Right.
how they want to share it.
Right.
So that's truly where that kind of goes to.
And so I think one of the important aspects of this that I think people should understand is that you've emphasized that not everybody has access to that. There has to be reasons to even ask kind of blindly, does this person have that? But that this is such a secure locker that just like any other piece of evidence, for instance, that a police department would collect from a crime scene, that piece of evidence is documented. It's put in a bag or a box or a whatever. It's sealed with evidence tape. It's initialed. It's dated. It's put into the evidence room where it's logged. And there is a chain of custody that exists so that when and if this situation goes to court, defense attorneys are always going to question that chain of custody to make sure that the chain was never broken and that the evidence wasn't tampered with or made up or artificially put into evidence. So that's a critical issue, I think, that's really important for people to understand about doing an EAA is that, yes, it is going to be a great piece of evidence because that chain of custody is documented. It is there and it's digital and it's never going to go away. I think that's a critical aspect
Exactly.
of this.
You can't lie on this thing. You can't make up, the kind of stuff that you could have on there. You need to be, it's valid information, it's valid evidence. And that's a great analogy because it truly is in a digital format. That very thing is we are trying to keep it just like that. And here's the thing that we're going to be working towards as we build the awareness for the EAA is in working with the different professions and environments to which a victim might navigate, whether it be law enforcement or the judicial system or the medical system or the educational system. That, let's say, if a officer goes out on a DV call or goes out on a mental health call, they may ask that person, do you have an EAA? And we find a system to which they can then, and again, keeping that chain of custody clean. Can you imagine if we can start getting them directly from the law enforcement, directly from the medical system, that if they come in for something under the emergency room before they leave, they ask them, do you have an EAA? Do you want me to send this medical report to your EAA? And there will be various systems, various protocols and procedures in place that we're going to be able to gather that information straight from to keep that chain of custody as impeccable as we can.
Because if, for instance, the officer does have the wherewithal and the mindset to ask that question and it's answered affirmatively, yes, I have an EAA, or no, but I want to do an EAA, I want to start something along those lines. If the officer is doing his job right, he's going to document that in his reports. There is an EAA, right? And that police officer's statement, that report,
Then becomes that information. It's there.
It's a verifiable, non-hearsay piece of evidence because it was documented in an official capacity by an official person.
Exactly.
Another critical, important part of this that kind of piggybacks onto this, and you've mentioned it already, is that if you want to help secure a prosecution, one of the best ways to do that is to show a pattern of behavior. And if somebody's documenting something from the get-go 15 years ago, and in almost every report, there's this pattern of behavior that's documented by the victim in their EAA, a prosecutor is going to be doing backflips. It's like handing that prosecutor on a silver platter that evidence that's needed to obtain that prosecution because patterns of behavior are hugely strong, extremely reliable indicators of perpetrator mentality and perpetrator habits.
It does. It speaks to because behavior patterns are indicative of also, you're able to dictate lethality dependent on those behaviors. What is statistical thing that tells me that I could be in a lot of danger given that these are the prior behavior patterns that we've established. And like you said, it's kind of hard to have anybody fight those. So while, yes, it's discoverable because I've had a lot of people focus on that part, what you're not focusing on is the fact that I have 18 little things here that say all the same things. So regardless of the fact that now you get to know that I wrote these 18 things, you still have to talk about these 18 things. So it is such a great way to be able to give people the ability to use their stories and to use their experiences in a way that gives them back their power and control and gives them back their autonomy. And maybe in all of those getting to them, they then move forward in a way that is more powerful for them, that empowers them, that emboldens them to then do the things they need to do to change those situations. So, a lot of times on documented abuse, there's different resources. I work with a lot of different organizations that are on there and things like that because we need to be able to provide these services. It's unfortunate that we have to, but that's what we're here for.
But
And as long as the work is here, we're here.
yeah. And having that type of vault, that type of locker, that type of documentation, that type of security, and then being able to utilize patterns of behavior, it's almost like a fingerprint, right? When somebody repeats an abusive behavior every time they're involved in abusing the victim, it's the same pattern, whether it's strangulation, whether it's a backhand slap, whether it's words that are used over and over again. Those become like a fingerprint, and those individualize that perpetrator against that victim.
Exactly. And if we can get people to understand those patterns, because like I said, so many times when it gets to the point where there's the element of physical violence, that's been years in the making in terms of the other types of violence that have been perpetrated. If it's gotten to the physical, now we're really concerned. And in terms of strangulation, okay, so I have learned so much in doing this over the years. Strangulation is your biggest indicator of lethality.
Absolutely.
I know I'm singing to the choir when I'm telling you this, but
Yeah.
I've taken so many different strangulation courses and things like that. And when you've got that element, and to any law enforcement officer who might be listening, if there is an element of strangulation, just know that lethality is enormous.
It's
Enormous. It's like 900%, or it's some crazy percentage that if it's gotten to strangulation, that the likelihood that there is going to be something even more dangerous or fatal. There's no way to hide that right there. So just know if those are the elements to which you are dealing with in terms of the situation you've come across, or it is one you yourself are dealing with and have been told that it's not that bad, please reach out for help.
yeah.
Please reach out for help.
Absolutely. Norma, we are going to have you back soon. We're going to keep this discussion going. We're just going to pick up where we just left off.
Well, I think that would be great, Dave, because we have so many layers to this onion that you and I could really dive into because of the background you have and what I've learned and kind of just how the situation has all played out. I believe we could have a lot of great conversations around this subject.
We absolutely can. And there's so much more to talk about. Like I said, more law enforcement aspect of it, the prosecutorial aspect of it, and the victim education into what abuse is and what those patterns look like, and not to ignore those patterns, to document them over and over and over again. So, yes, we have much more to talk about, much more to get educated on. And I'm looking forward to having you back, Norma.
That would be outstanding, Dave, because this has been a great conversation. I really feel like this has been more like a conversation than it has been podcast.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for being here, and we'll be in touch to do this again.
Okay, that'd be great.
Thanks, Norma.
Oh, no problem, Dave. Thanks.
That does it for another episode of Sexual Assault Survivor Stories, the SAS podcast. What stays with me after conversations like this isn't just the information, It's the weight of responsibility. Because when somebody documents abuse, when they preserve a story, when they refuse to let it disappear, they're doing more than recording history. They're pushing back against erasure. Norma's work through Document the Abuse reminds us that justice doesn't always come in the form we hope for, but truth still matters. Documentation matters. Memory matters. And survivors deserve to know that their stories don't vanish just because a system fails to act. Cases like Stacy Peterson's don't end neatly. There's no resolution that brings comfort, but there is purpose in refusing to look away, in refusing to let narratives be controlled by power, and in choosing to believe survivors even when the outcome is uncertain. If this episode resonated with you, I encourage you to learn more about the work being done to preserve survivor voices and hold systems accountable. And if you're a survivor listening right now, your story matters, even if it was never believed, even if it was never documented, even if it still lives only inside you. Finally, as I close out this episode, let me remind you to please do your part to help bring justice to victims and survivors. A great way to do this is to start by believing, and also help normalize the conversation about the realities of rape and sexual assault, because the truth is, we all know someone who's experienced rape or sexual assault. We'll see you next week.